The spaceship Horizon floated quietly in the darkness of space. Captain Daniel Harris stood on the bridge and looked at the big screen in front of him. An alien ship was coming closer. His heart beat faster with excitement. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for. After 3 long months of talking through radio signals, they were finally going to meet the Krell, face to face. Daniel had spent weeks preparing for this meeting. His crew was ready. Lieutenant Amy Collins sat at her station, watching the communication systems. Commander Jake Morrison checked the weapons, which were turned off to show the aliens they came in peace. Everyone on the ship knew this day would change human history forever. The alien ship was beautiful and strange. It looked like it was made of crystal and seemed to bend the light around it. Daniel had never seen anything like it. He ordered his crew to get ready for docking. They extended the docking tunnel they had built using the designs the Krell had sent them. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. But then something went wrong. Amy noticed that the alien ship's energy levels suddenly jumped very high. Before she could say anything, weapons appeared on the Krell ship. Rows and rows of guns pointed straight at the horizon. Daniel felt his stomach drop. This was not supposed to happen. A message came through from the Krell commander. The voice was cold and mechanical, without any feeling. The words made Daniel's blood turn to ice. The alien said that humans were too dangerous. The Galactic Council had studied humanity and decided they were too violent and unpredictable. Daniel could not believe what he was hearing. They had come in peace. They had no weapons ready. They had shown nothing but friendship. And now the aliens wanted to kill them just because humans had the ability to fight. It made no sense. Anger started to build inside him, hot and strong. The Krell fired their weapons. Bright bolts of energy shot toward the horizon. But Jake was already moving. He turned on the defensive systems and pushed the ship to the side. The crew moved quickly and smoothly. They had trained for years for situations like this. They hoped it would never happen. But they were ready. Daniel made a quick decision. He told Amy to send a message back to Earth. Tell them that first contact had failed. Tell them the Krell attacked without reason. Tell them that humanity needed to respond. His voice was calm and steady. But inside he was burning with rage and determination. Something strange happened then. From deep in his chest, Daniel felt a sound rising up. It was a growl, low and dangerous. It was the sound of an animal that had been cornered and threatened. Around the bridge, his crew made the same sound. The growl echoed through the ship, making the walls vibrate. The Krell had made a terrible mistake. They thought humans would be easy to destroy. They had studied human history and seen all the wars and violence. But they did not understand what they were looking at. Humans were not just violent. They were survivors. They were predators from a harsh world. And when predators are threatened, they fight back. Daniel ordered the pilot to get them out of there. The horizon twisted and turned through space, dodging the Krell weapons. Jake fired back, not trying to destroy the alien ship, but to create enough confusion for them to escape. The human ship was smaller and faster. The crew worked together perfectly, each person knowing exactly what to do. As they jumped away into faster-than-light travel, Daniel looked at his crew. They were scared, but angry. They had come hoping to make friends among the stars. Instead, they found enemies who judged them before even meeting them. The Krell thought human violence made them inferior. They were about to learn that human violence, combined with human intelligence, made them very dangerous. The growl that had started on the bridge became something more. It was not just anger. It was a promise. A promise that humanity would not lie down and die. A promise that they would fight for their right to exist. A promise that the Krell would regret firing first. Amy received a response from Earth Command. They had heard the message. Ships were already being prepared. Admiral Moore was taking command of a fleet. The entire human military was mobilizing. Earth had been building warships in secret for years, pretending to be peaceful explorers while preparing for the worst. The worst had come. Daniel felt tired suddenly. He had wanted peace so badly. He had imagined a future where humans learned from older, wiser species, where humanity joined a great galactic community and became better than they were. Instead, that community had tried to murder them for being what evolution had made them. But there was no time for sadness. The horizon needed repairs. The crew needed rest. And Daniel needed to prepare a full report on everything that had happened. The data from the battle would be valuable. It would show Earth's military exactly what they were facing. As the ship traveled back toward human space, Daniel thought about what was coming. War. A real war against an alien empire. Humanity's first steps into the galaxy would be stained with blood. But it was not their choice. The Krell had chosen this path. The growl still rumbled in his chest. It felt primal and ancient. Like 2 weeks passed since the horizon barely escaped with its life. Now, a massive human fleet gathered at the edge of Krell space. Admiral Patricia Moore stood on the bridge of the carrier Enterprise, looking at the 40 warships that surrounded her. Each ship was ready for battle. Each crew member burned with controlled anger. The fleet included many powerful ships. Captain Ryan Tucker commanded the battleship Defiance. Commander Lisa Henderson led the heavy cruiser, Vengeance. There were dozens of smaller ships carrying thousands of Marines under Colonel Greg Palmer. Every single person in the fleet had watched the video from the horizon. They had seen the Krell fire without warning on an unarmed peace mission. Patricia studied the computer displays that showed where the Krell ships were positioned. The aliens had fortified their border with many defensive stations and patrol fleets. They were confident in their power. The Krell Empire had conquered 17 different species over the past 1,000 years. Some, they had absorbed into their empire. Others, they had destroyed completely. No one had ever really fought back successfully. Patricia called a meeting with all her senior officers. They appeared on screens around her, faces hard and determined. She began to speak. Her voice was strong and clear. She told them that the Krell thought they understood humanity. The aliens had analyzed human television shows and history books. They saw human wars and violence. But they made a big mistake. They thought human violence meant humans were stupid and uncontrolled. They did not understand that humans could think and adapt and learn. Lieutenant Kevin Scott showed everyone the Krell defensive formation on a tactical map. It was a standard galactic military setup, the kind that had been used for centuries. The Krell fought the same way every time because it always worked against other species. But humanity was different. Humans had fought each other for thousands of years. They had learned every trick and tactic. They knew how to adapt and surprise their enemies. The battle plan was smart and brutal at the same time. The main fleet would attack the Krell defenses head-on, making a lot of noise and drawing attention. Meanwhile, smaller teams led by Commander Helen Brooks would sneak around the sides using stealth technology. The Krell did not know humans had stealth ships. Captain Martin Lee would command fast destroyers that would cause chaos behind enemy lines. But technology was not the real advantage. The secret weapon was something the Krell had listed as a human weakness in their reports. Human emotions. The anger that every crew member felt was not making them stupid or reckless. It was giving them energy and determination. It was making them creative and unpredictable. The Krell had never faced an enemy that could be angry and smart at the same time. Patricia felt good about the plan. She had spent 20 years studying other species from far away. She learned everything she could about how galactic powers fought wars. And she discovered something important. They had all become lazy and predictable. They followed old rules and ancient tactics. They fought against enemies who gave up when they started losing. Humans were not like that. Humans came from Earth, a planet that tried to kill them in 1,000 different ways. Ice ages, volcanoes, diseases, predators, and each other. Humanity had survived by never giving up and always learning from mistakes. Every defeat in human history taught lessons that led to future victories. The fleet prepared to jump into Krell space. Every crew member checked their stations one last time. Weapons were loaded. Shields were charged. Marines put on their armor and checked their guns. Everyone knew this would be dangerous. The Krell had more ships and their technology was very advanced. But humans had something the Krell did not have. They had the will to win, no matter what. Patricia gave the order. The fleet jumped into hyperspace. When they came out, they were deep in Krell territory, right where the aliens had set up their main defenses. Alarms started blaring on Krell ships. The aliens scrambled to respond to this invasion. As the human ships appeared, something happened on every bridge and in every corridor. A low rumble started building. It came from the chests of every human in the fleet. That primal growl that Captain Daniel Harris and his crew had made weeks ago. It spread through 40,000 human voices, creating a harmony of rage and determination. The Krell defenders heard it through every communication channel. The sound transmitted across space. For the first time, the aliens felt something they had not felt in centuries. Fear. They realized that their psychological analysis had been completely wrong. They had not scared away a weak species. They had attacked a predator and made it angry. Captain Ryan Tucker smiled grimly as the Defiance moved into position. His weapons officer called out targets. His pilot maneuvered the big battleship with surprising grace. Around him, his crew worked like a single organism. They had trained together for years. They trusted each other completely. This was what made humans dangerous. Not just individual strength, but the ability to work together perfectly. Commander Lisa Henderson pushed her cruiser forward aggressively. She was not being reckless. She was following the plan. Her job was to make the Krell think she was desperate and draw their attention. Behind her, other ships moved into position. The Krell were so focused on what they could see that they missed what was hiding. Commander Helen Brooks and her stealth squadron drifted silently through a field of old space debris. Their ships were invisible to Krell sensors. They moved slowly and carefully toward the alien command ship. Helen had personally designed some of the tactics they were using. She had studied ancient Earth naval warfare and adapted those lessons to space combat. Colonel Greg Palmer waited in the Marine deployment bay with his soldiers. They might not be needed in this battle, but they were ready. Palmer had fought in some of Earth's harshest environments. He had learned patience and discipline. If the order came to board enemy ships, his Marines would show the Krell what human close combat looked like. The two fleets opened fire. Space lit up with weapons fire. Missiles streaked across the darkness. Energy beams cut through the void. Ships on both sides took damage. But there was a difference. When Krell ships were hit, they fell back to regroup and repair. When human ships were hit, they kept fighting. Humans, the Krell fleet fell into chaos when their command ship went silent. Without central coordination, individual captains tried to take control, but nobody agreed on what to do. The rigid command structure that had worked for centuries against weaker species now became a fatal weakness. Meanwhile, the human fleet moved like a school of fish, each ship knowing its role without needing constant orders. Captain Ryan Tucker saw a Krell heavy cruiser trying to escape toward an asteroid field. He smiled and ordered his crew to pursue. His weapons officer, Danny Foster, called out targeting information, while his navigator, Claire Watson, flew the Defiance through spaces that the bigger alien ship could not fit through. The Krell captain was good, but he was following training that was hundreds of years old. Tucker studied the enemy's movements and recognized the pattern. It was a standard retreat maneuver that any human military academy student would know. He called out orders, calmly. Danny fired missiles ahead of where the Krell ship would be. Not where it was now. Claire brought the Defiance around in a tight arc that put them in a perfect attack position. The Krell cruiser came out of the asteroid field exactly where Tucker predicted. Waiting for it were Commander Helen Brooks and her stealth squadron. The aliens had no idea the human ships were there until weapons fire lit up their hull. The Krell shields failed, and the ship began venting atmosphere. Escape pods launched as the crew abandoned ship. Admiral Patricia Moore gave an order across all channels, making sure even the Krell could hear it. Let the escape pods go. Humans were not here to commit genocide. They were here to teach a lesson. She said clearly that humanity fights with purpose and discipline, not mindless rage. Every word was chosen carefully to send a message to the entire galaxy. The battle continued, but the outcome was already clear. Commander Lisa Henderson led a group of human cruisers against Krell reinforcements that had been held back. The alien commanders thought fresh ships would turn the tide. But they had not learned yet. Human tactics were not about having the most ships or the biggest guns. It was about using what you had in the smartest way possible. Lieutenant Commander Paul Martinez commanded a destroyer called the Relentless. He used his ship's speed to draw enemy fire, while Captain Julie Andrews and her frigate squadron attacked from unexpected angles. The Krell adapted to each move, but slowly. Their tactical computers needed time to process new scenarios. Human minds worked faster, seeing patterns and opportunities instantly. Colonel Greg Palmer finally got his chance to join the fight. A Krell troop transport tried to reach a strategic space station. If they fortified that position, it would cost many lives to take it back. Palmer and his Marines launched in boarding craft, small, fast ships designed specifically for hostile insertions. Palmer spoke to his troops over the radio as they approached the enemy vessel. He reminded them of their training. The Krell soldiers were bigger and stronger than individual humans. But Marines did not fight as individuals. They fought as units. They covered each other. They adapted to enemy tactics. They never panicked, no matter how bad things got. This was the human advantage. The boarding action was violent and quick. The Krell warriors were confident in their natural advantages. They were bred for combat over many generations. But they had never faced an enemy like human Marines. Palmer's soldiers used every trick in the book. They used the environment against the enemy. They coordinated their attacks with hand signals and brief radio calls. When one Marine was wounded, 2 others covered him while a medic worked. Sergeant Linda Cooper led her squad through the narrow corridors of the Krell ship. She had studied the ship's layout during the approach and memorized every turn. When Krell warriors tried to ambush them, she was ready. Her squad moved like they were one person, each Marine knowing exactly where the others were, without looking. The Krell had never experienced anything like it. They were used to fighting enemies that panicked under pressure, or fought as confused individuals. These humans were different. They stayed calm. They worked together. And they never stopped advancing, no matter how many Krell stood in their way. Within an hour, the transport ship was secured. The Krell crew surrendered after realizing that continuing to fight would only get them killed for no reason. Palmer made sure the prisoners were treated with respect. He gave them water and medical attention. He knew that every survivor would tell stories about this battle when they went home. In space, the human fleet had completely broken through the Krell defensive lines. Admiral Moore watched her tactical display as enemy ships scattered in all directions. Some tried to regroup. Others just ran. The organized defense had turned into a rout. The growl of anger that had started this battle had transformed into something more controlled but just as fierce. Moore gave the order to cease fire. Let the Krell retreat. Let them go home and tell their empire what happened here. Humanity had come in peace. When attacked, they showed their true nature. Not as mindless savages, but as intelligent predators who knew exactly how to fight and when to stop. The message was broadcasting across every frequency. Humans were not prey. They never had been. Earth was a death world where only the strongest and smartest survived. Humanity was the apex predator of that world. The Krell had thought human violence made them inferior. Instead, that violence, combined with intelligence and discipline, made them unstoppable. Captain Ryan Tucker stood on his bridge and looked at the retreating Krell ships. Part of him wanted to chase them down and finish this. but he understood Moore's reasoning. This was not about destruction. It was about making a point. The galaxy needed to understand what humanity was capable of when pushed. Commander Helen Brooks checked on her squadron. Every ship had taken some damage, but nobody had been lost. Her crews were exhausted but satisfied. They had done their jobs perfectly. The stealth attack on the command ship had been the key moment of the battle. Without it, the fight might have lasted much longer and cost many more lives. Lisa Henderson's cruiser Vengeance had taken heavy damage during its aggressive attacks. Her shields had failed twice, and her hull was scarred by enemy weapons. But the ship was still flying, and her crew was alive. They had drawn enemy fire away from more vulnerable ships. They had done exactly what they were supposed to do. Martin Lee brought his destroyer squadron back to the main fleet. His ships looked like they had been through a war, which they had. Burn marks covered their hulls. Some weapons were damaged, but every single ship was still operational. His crews had fought with skill and courage. They had disrupted the Krell rear areas and prevented reinforcements from reaching the main battle. The human fleet began regrouping. Damage control teams started repairs. Medical personnel treated the wounded. Everyone was tired, but there was a sense of satisfaction in the air. They had proven something important today. Not just to the Krell, but to themselves. Humanity belonged in space. 3 months after the battle, Ambassador Christine Palmer walked through the corridors of the Galactic Council station. The station was enormous, floating at the center of civilized space. It had been built thousands of years ago, when the first species came together to form a peaceful alliance. Now Christine was here to represent humanity, a species the Council had refused to acknowledge just months before. Captain Daniel Harris walked beside her as military liaison. He had recovered from his injuries aboard the Horizon. The scars on his face were a reminder of what had started all of this. Commander Jake Morrison and Lieutenant Amy Collins had been promoted and now handled diplomatic security. Their presence was a quiet reminder that humanity's peace offer came with strength behind it. The council chamber was designed to hold hundreds of different species. Some breathed oxygen like humans. Others needed different atmospheres and sat in special enclosed areas. Some were tall and thin. Others were short and wide. A few did not even have bodies that made sense to human eyes. Christine took her position at the central speaking platform and looked at all of them. Nigh 13. Nigh 13. Nigh 13. Some of the alien representatives looked curious about humanity. Others seemed afraid. A few appeared openly hostile. The Krell ambassador sat in stony silence. He was a replacement for the previous ambassador who had authorized the attack on the Horizon. That ambassador had been removed from his position in disgrace after the military defeat. Christine began to speak. Her voice was calm and clear, projected through translators so every species could understand. She told them that she represented a species they had called too violent for civilized space. She said they were right about human capacity for violence. But they were completely wrong about what that meant for humanity's character. She activated a holographic display that showed Earth's history. But she did not show the wars and conflicts that the Council had used to reject humanity. Instead, she showed human cooperation, great works of art and music, scientific discoveries, medical advances, the countless times throughout history when humans chose peace over war when given the choice. Christine continued her speech. She explained that Earth was a harsh world that challenged humanity at every turn. Predators hunted them. Diseases killed them. Natural disasters destroyed their homes. And yes, humans fought each other. But that constant struggle taught humanity to be adaptable and resilient. It taught them when violence was necessary and when peace was better. Admiral Patricia Moore appeared through a holographic link from the human fleet. The fleet was now stationed at the edge of Krell space, acting as a peacekeeping force. Moore's presence on the big screen was impressive and intimidating. She spoke with authority. She said the Krell had attacked humanity because they feared what humans might become. The Krell were right to be afraid, but wrong about the reason. They feared human violence, but should have feared human potential. Captain Ryan Tucker, Commander Helen Brooks, and other battle commanders joined the transmission. Their faces appeared on screens around the council chamber. Tucker spoke next. He said humanity had proved they could fight. Now, they were proving they could show mercy. All Krell prisoners had been returned unharmed. Damaged ships had been repaired and sent back. Humans could have conquered Krell worlds, but chose not to. Colonel Greg Palmer stepped forward in the council chamber. His military bearing drew attention from every representative. He explained that on Earth, the most successful predators were not the ones that killed everything. They were the ones that maintained balance. They knew when to hunt and when to hold back. Humanity learned that lesson through centuries of mistakes and near extinction. Humans did not want to conquer the galaxy. They wanted to protect it. The Krell ambassador finally spoke. His words were translated into standard galactic language. He said that humanity had defeated Krell forces completely. By the normal rules of galactic warfare, humans could have claimed Krell worlds as conquered territory. Instead, the peace terms humanity offered were generous beyond belief. This was not how powerful species normally behaved after winning a war. Christine responded directly to the Krell. She said, humanity was not like other galactic powers, because humans did not evolve in a peaceful universe with easy living. They evolved in chaos and violence. But that taught them that survival was not just about being the strongest. It was about being the wisest. Knowing when to fight and when to build peace. She looked at the council leadership. She told them they had rejected humanity because they analyzed human history and saw only violence. But they missed the bigger pattern. Yes, humans fight, but they also negotiate and compromise. They create art and explore science. They form friendships across every barrier. Human violence was real, but it was not the definition of humanity. It was just one tool among many. Admiral Moore's hologram expanded to show the entire human fleet. She told the council that humanity was offering a choice. Accept humans as partners and protectors and equals. Let humanity prove that a species born in violence could choose peace. Or reject them and watch as humans built their own path among the stars, with or without council approval. The growl that had started the whole conflict returned, but softer and more controlled now. Every human in the council chamber and on the ships surrounding the station let it rumble in their chests. It was not a threat. It was a promise. Humanity was here to stay. The galaxy would have to adjust to that reality, one way or another. The council asked for time to discuss and vote. Christine and the other humans were asked to wait outside while the representatives talked privately. Daniel, Jake, and Amy stood guard, while Christine sat and tried to stay calm. This was the moment that would determine humanity's future among the stars. 17 hours passed. Christine barely slept. She reviewed her speech in her mind, wondering if she should have said something different. But she knew the message had been clear. Humanity was strong, but wanted peace. They would defend themselves but preferred cooperation. The choice was up to the council now. Finally, the council recalled Christine and her delegation. Christine Palmer accepted the council's offer with grace and dignity. But inside, her heart was pounding with excitement and relief. Humanity had done it. They had gone from rejected outsiders to full council members in just 3 months. The path had been bloody and dangerous, but it led to exactly where humans wanted to be. The celebration on Earth was massive when the news arrived. Cities around the world erupted in joy. People danced in the streets. Fireworks lit up the night sky. Humanity had faced the ultimate test and passed. They were no longer alone in the universe. They had earned respect from species that had existed for thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. But not everyone was celebrating. In military headquarters around Earth, Serious discussions were taking place. Admiral Moore had returned home to brief the leadership on what the war had revealed. The Krell had been overconfident and predictable. But that would not always be the case. Future enemies would learn from Krell mistakes. Humanity needed to stay sharp. Captain Daniel Harris stood in front of a committee of generals and politicians. He told them everything he had learned during First Contact and its violent aftermath. The Krell had profiled humanity as dangerous and unpredictable. They were right, but they underestimated how humans could channel that danger into effective tactics. The key lesson was that humanity's emotional intensity, when controlled, was a strategic advantage. The committee asked difficult questions. What if other species also saw humans as threats? What if the council membership was just a way to keep humanity contained? Daniel answered honestly. Some species would always fear humans. The best response was to prove through actions that human strength was used for protection, not conquest. Trust had to be earned over time. Meanwhile, on the Galactic Council station, Christine Palmer was learning the complex politics of a multi-species government. There were 47 species on the council, each with their own interests and histories. Some had been allies for millennia. Others barely tolerated each other. Human membership was already shifting the balance of power. Several species approached Christine privately to form alliances. They saw humanity as a useful counterweight to older, more established powers. Christine was careful in her responses. She knew that every deal and agreement would have consequences. Humanity was new to galactic politics and needed to learn the rules before trying to change them. The Krell ambassador requested a private meeting with Christine. She agreed, bringing Daniel and Colonel Palmer for security. The meeting room was neutral territory, monitored by council peacekeepers. The Krell ambassador entered looking uncomfortable and slightly ashamed. He spoke through his translator. He said the Krell Empire had made a terrible mistake. Their analysis of humanity had been flawed from the beginning. They saw violence and assumed it meant humans were primitive and irrational. They never considered that human violence was a tool, not a defining trait. The Krell wanted to formally apologize and begin building a better relationship. Christine listened carefully. She knew this was a significant moment. The Krell were a proud species that rarely admitted mistakes. She responded that humanity accepted the apology and was willing to move forward, but trust would take time to rebuild. Actions mattered more than words. If the Krell truly wanted peace, they would need to prove it through cooperation and respect. The ambassador agreed. He said the Krell military was studying the battle extensively. Human tactics had been revolutionary by galactic standards. The way humans coordinated without rigid command structures, how they adapted instantly to changing situations. The Krell wanted to learn from humanity, not as conquered people, but as equals with something valuable to teach. Palmer spoke up. He said that humanity was also willing to learn from the Krell. Earth's military had centuries of experience, but galactic warfare had challenges humanity had never faced. Different environments, exotic weapons, species with abilities humans did not have. Cooperation could make both species stronger. The Krell ambassador agreed enthusiastically. Over the following months, human ships began joint patrols with other council species. Captain Ryan Tucker's battleship Defiance paired with a Krell cruiser to patrol the frontier regions. At first, the two crews were suspicious of each other, but gradually, through shared duties and common challenges, they began to work together. Commander Helen Brooks was assigned to train Council security forces in human stealth tactics. She found that many species had relied on the same detection methods for so long that they had stopped innovating. Her lessons on how to hide in plain sight and attack from unexpected directions fascinated her alien students. Some of them adapted human methods to their own unique abilities, creating entirely new tactical approaches. Lisa Henderson took on a diplomatic role, using her military experience to help negotiate peaceful solutions to border disputes between council members. She found that many conflicts arose from misunderstandings rather than genuine hostility. Her straightforward human communication style often cut through layers of diplomatic protocol and got to the heart of problems. Martin Lee continued commanding his destroyer squadron, now expanded to include ships from other species. His mixed fleet became known for rapid response to emergencies anywhere in Council space. Pirates and raiders learned to fear the sight of Lee's destroyers appearing out of hyperspace. His crews worked smoothly with their alien counterparts, proving that cooperation across species was possible. Sergeant Linda Cooper's Marine unit became the foundation for a new Council rapid response force. Her soldiers trained alongside warriors from a dozen different species. They learned each other's strengths and weaknesses. The humans taught patience and tactical flexibility. The aliens taught unique skills that only their species could perform. Together, they became something greater than any single species could achieve. Back on Earth, society was changing rapidly. Knowing they were part of a galactic community changed human perspective. Old conflicts that had seemed so important now felt petty. Why fight over borders and resources when an entire galaxy was opening up? Peace movements gained strength. Education focused more on cooperation and understanding, but the military did not relax. Admiral Moore made sure that humanity's defenses stayed strong. The galaxy had proven to be dangerous. Peace was wonderful, but it required the street. Christine Palmer did not wait for the Council to finish debating. She contacted Admiral Moore immediately. Patricia understood, without needing lengthy explanations. The Tellan colony was 3 days away at maximum speed for most Council fleets. Human ships, with their more advanced engines, could be there in 36 hours. Every hour of delay meant more innocent deaths. Moore gave orders instantly. Captain Martin Lee's destroyer squadron was closest to the crisis. His ships changed course immediately and pushed their engines to maximum. Commander Helen Brooks took her stealth squadron as backup. Captain Ryan Tucker's battleship Defiance and several other heavy ships would follow as soon as possible. The human fleet moved with the speed and decisiveness that had defeated the Krell. Christine informed the Council that humanity was responding to the emergency. Some representatives objected that proper authorization procedures had not been followed. Others worried about humans taking military action without oversight. Christine listened politely, then said something that became famous throughout galactic history. Humanity did not need permission to do what was right. The time for debate was over. The time for action had arrived. Martin Lee's ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Tellan system 34 hours after the distress call. His sensors immediately picked up the attackers. They were raiders from a species called the Vrek, violent opportunists who preyed on weak targets. The Vrek had been a problem for centuries, but Council response was always slow and cautious. The raiders counted on that. Lee looked at the tactical display. 5 Vrek warships were bombarding the colony from orbit. Thousands of Tellan civilians were trapped on the surface with no way to escape. The raiders were not trying to conquer. They were simply destroying everything for sport and taking whatever valuables they could loot from the ruins. The Vrek noticed the human destroyers and sent a mocking message. They said the Council had no authority here. This system was outside official Council protection. The humans should leave unless they wanted to die alongside the Tellan. Lee did not bother responding with words. He responded with action. Human destroyers were smaller than the Vrek warships, but they were faster and more maneuverable. Lee split his squadron into 2 groups. One group attacked head-on, drawing Vrek attention. The other group swung wide and came in from an unexpected angle. The raiders tried to adapt, but they were used to fighting enemies that followed predictable patterns. Lee's weapons officer destroyed a Vrek ship with a perfectly aimed missile barrage. The raider exploded in a ball of fire. The other Vrek ships turned to face this new threat, abandoning their bombardment of the colony. Lee smiled grimly. That was the first objective achieved. Get the raiders away from the defenseless civilians. The space battle was fierce. The Vrek were experienced fighters who had terrorized the frontier for generations. But they had never faced humans before. Every time they thought they understood human tactics, Lee changed his approach. When they expected aggression, he pulled back and laid traps. When they expected caution, he attacked with overwhelming force. Commander Helen Brooks arrived with her stealth squadron just as the battle reached its peak. The Vrek never saw her ships coming. Brooks positioned her vessels perfectly and struck at the same moment from 3 different angles. 2 more Vrek warships were crippled before they understood what was happening. The last 2 raider ships tried to escape. Lee was ready for that too. His fastest destroyers had been positioned to cut off retreat routes. The Vrek found themselves trapped, with no way out. 1 ship surrendered immediately. The other tried to fight its way through, and was destroyed. Lee gave the surviving raiders a simple choice: surrender completely or die. The Vrek captain chose surrender. His crew was taken prisoner. Lee sent Marines to secure their ship and make sure no evidence was destroyed. The raiders had committed terrible crimes, and humanity was going to make sure they faced justice. But first, there was a colony to save. Lee's ships moved into orbit around the Tellan world. The surface was burning in dozens of places. Buildings had been destroyed. The death toll was already in the thousands. But there were survivors, and they needed help immediately. Lee called for medical teams and engineers to prepare for emergency deployment. Captain Ryan Tucker arrived with the heavy ships, bringing supplies and additional personnel. Colonel Greg Palmer's Marines landed on the surface to provide security and assist with rescue operations. Human medics worked alongside Tellan doctors to treat the wounded. Human engineers helped repair damaged infrastructure. The Tellan people were overwhelmed by human assistance. They had sent their distress call, expecting a slow council response that might arrive too late. Instead, humans had crossed the galaxy at top speed and fought a dangerous battle to protect people they had never met. The Tellan colony leader asked Christine Palmer why humans had risked so much for strangers. Christine gave an answer that resonated across the galaxy. She said that humanity came from a harsh world where survival depended on cooperation and protecting the weak. Humans had learned through painful experience that civilized society required strong people to defend those who could not defend themselves. Power, without responsibility, was tyranny. Strength, without compassion, was cruelty. The Council formally thanked humanity for their rapid response and successful defense of the Tellan colony. But some representatives expressed concern about humans taking military action without authorization. They worried that humanity might become too powerful, too willing to use force to solve problems. Christine addressed the Council directly. She reminded them that humans had waited for Council debate while innocents died. Humanity would always follow proper procedures when time allowed. But in emergencies, they would act first and ask permission later. The purpose of strength was to protect, and protection sometimes required immediate action. Admiral Moore stood beside Christine in the council chamber. She said that humanity understood the council's concerns, but the galaxy needed to understand something fundamental about humans. They were predators, yes, but predators with a conscience. They had power but chose to use it responsibly. They would defend the weak, challenge the bullies, and maintain peace through strength. The growl that had become humanity's signature rose up again in the council chamber. Not angry now, but determined and confident. It was the sound of guardians taking their position. Every human in the room, from Christine to the Marine guards at the doors, let that rumble build in their chests. The galaxy needed to hear it and understand what it meant. Over the following years, humanity's role as peacekeepers grew. Human ships patrolled the frontier, responding to emergencies with speed that other species could not match. Human diplomats mediated disputes with a directness that cut through bureaucratic delays. Human soldiers trained council forces in new tactics that made everyone more effective. Not everyone liked it. Some species resented human influence. Others feared human power. There were incidents and conflicts. But slowly, grudgingly, The galaxy accepted that humanity was here to stay, and most came to appreciate what humans brought to the galactic community. The Krell became humanity's closest allies, having learned respect through conflict. The Tellan people never forgot the humans who saved them. Dozens of other species formed partnerships and friendships with Earth. Humanity had proven that a violent past did not determine a peaceful future. Captain Daniel Harris retired from active service and became an instructor at the new Galactic Military Academy. He taught young officers from dozens of species about human tactical philosophy. His most important lesson was simple but profound. Violence was a tool, not an identity. Knowing how to fight was important. Knowing when not to fight was wisdom. Christine Palmer eventually became the Council's chief peacekeeper, the first human to hold such a high position. She guided Council policy with the same principles that had brought humanity to the stars: strength to protect, wisdom to know when to fight, compassion to remember why peace mattered. The growl that had started as anger and fear had evolved into something nobler. It was the sound of protectors watching over civilization. When hostile forces looked at the peaceful species of the galaxy and saw prey, they heard that growl and knew their mistake. Humanity was watching. Humans protected their own, and the definition of their own now included the entire galactic community. Admiral Patricia Moore looked at Earth from her office window on the orbital station. The blue planet had given birth to a species that conquered itself before reaching for the stars. That violent history could have made humanity into monsters. Instead, it made them into guardians. The galaxy was safer because humans had learned from their mistakes and chosen to be better. The story of humanity's arrival among the stars became a legend told throughout the galaxy. How the Krell raised their weapons expecting an easy victory. How humans responded with a growl that meant they would never surrender. How that growl transformed from rage into purpose, from violence into protection, and when new threats emerged in later years, when hostile forces threatened peace, the call always went out the same way. Wake the humans, let them hear the danger, because humanity had proven something fundamental about their nature. They were predators. Yes, but predators who chose to hunt only those who threatened the innocent. They were violent, yes, but that violence was always in service of protecting what mattered. The galaxy had feared human violence and tried to eliminate humanity before they became a threat. But the galaxy learned a better lesson. Violence, in the service of protection, was not evil. It was necessary. And humanity, forged in Earth's brutal crucible, was uniquely suited to be the shield that civilization needed. The chairwoman announced that the Council recognized humanity as a sovereign species with full rights and protections under galactic law. Furthermore, the Council invited Earth to join as a member with special status as peacekeepers. It was unprecedented. No species had ever been given such a position after being initially rejected. NGH to defend it. Human shipyards worked constantly, building new vessels and improving old ones. Training exercises became more sophisticated. Incorporating lessons from galactic warfare, Christine Palmer established an embassy on the Council station. It became a gathering place for species interested in learning about humanity. She hosted cultural exchanges, showing alien visitors human art, music, and literature. She found that many species were fascinated by human creativity. The emotional depth of human culture was unlike anything else in the galaxy. One day, an emergency call came to the Council. A frontier colony was under attack by an unknown hostile force. The colony belonged to the Tellan species, a peaceful people with no military capability. They were being slaughtered. The Council debated what to do, which species should respond, what the political implications were. Patricia felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders. This victory was important, but it was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast and filled with unknown dangers. Some species would respect human strength, others would see it as a challenge. Humanity needed to be ready for both reactions. The chamber was silent as they entered. Every representative was in their place. The tension was thick enough to cut. Christine returned to the central platform and waited for the council's decision. The chairwoman of the council stood to speak. She was from a species so ancient that her people had founded the council thousands of years ago. Her species had seen empires rise and fall. They had guided the younger species toward peace and cooperation. Her words carried enormous weight. The chairwoman announced that the council recognized humanity as a sovereign species with full rights and protections under galactic law. Furthermore, the council invited Earth to join as a member with special status as peacekeepers. It was unprecedented. No species had ever been given such a position, after being initially rejected. At the same moment, Commander Helen Brooks and her stealth ships appeared right next to the Krell command vessel. Their weapons were already charged and aimed at weak points. The Krell flagship never had a chance to raise its shields. Precisely targeted attacks knocked out its sensors and communication systems. The massive ship went dark and started drifting. D earned their place through blood and courage. Admiral Moore sent a long report back to Earth Command. She detailed every aspect of the battle, what worked well, and what needed improvement. The Krell had been overconfident and predictable, but future enemies might not be. Humanity needed to keep learning and adapting. That was what made them successful on Earth, and it would keep them successful among the stars. Patricia felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders. This victory was important, but it was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast and filled with unknown dangers. Some species would respect human strength, others would see it as a challenge. Humanity needed to be ready for both reactions. The horizon limped home, damaged but not defeated. Behind it, the Krell Empire celebrated what they thought was a successful defense. They had driven away the violent humans. They had protected the galaxy from a dangerous species. They did not know they had just started a war they could not win. Were used to being hurt and pushing through pain. Patricia watched the battle unfold exactly as she had predicted. The Krell were following their standard defensive pattern. They were moving their ships to counter the human attack in predictable ways. They were doing everything by the book, and that was going to cost them dearly. She gave the signal. It was time for the real attack to begin. The human fleet, that had seemed to be struggling, suddenly changed formation with perfect precision. Ships that looked damaged were actually fine and ready to fight. The entire thing had been a performance to make the Krell overconfident. Captain Martin Lee's destroyer squadron burst through a gap in the Krell lines like wolves chasing sheep. His fast ships tore into the alien rear positions, destroying supply vessels and communication stations. The Krell formation started to break apart as confusion spread through their ranks. At the same moment, Commander Helen Brooks and her stealth ships appeared right next to the Krell command vessel. Their weapons were already charged and aimed at weak points. The Krell flagship never had a chance to raise its shields. Precisely targeted attacks knocked out its sensors and communication systems. The massive ship went dark and started drifting, something from humanity's deepest past. When early humans faced predators on Earth, they made that sound. When they defended their families from danger, they growled. It was coded into human DNA over millions of years of evolution. The Krell had analyzed human psychology and seen it as a weakness. They saw human emotions as making them unpredictable and dangerous. They were right about the dangerous part. But emotions did not make humans weak. Emotions made them strong. Anger gave them energy. Fear made them careful. Love made them protective. Daniel walked through the ship, checking on his crew. They were all doing their jobs, but he could see the change in them. They had left Earth excited and hopeful. They were returning home harder and colder. The universe had shown them its true face, and it was not friendly. But humans had survived worse. They had survived ice ages and plagues. They had survived predators and droughts. They had survived each other. If the galaxy wanted to test humanity, let it try. Humans had been tested by Earth itself for their entire existence. The galaxy had no idea what it had awakened. The horizon limped home, damaged but not defeated. Behind it, the Krell Empire celebrated what they thought was a successful defense. They had driven away the violent humans. They had protected the galaxy from a dangerous species. They did not know they had just started a war they could not win.